Welcome back to Story Behind the Painting by Muzea. We peel back the layers of canvas, history, and human ambition to reveal hidden narratives behind the world's greatest masterpieces. Today, in episode 29, we travel to Toledo, Spain. We stand inside a modest parish church before a painting so massive and revolutionary that it bridges the gap between earth and the heavens. This is The Burial of Count Orgaz, painted in 1586 by the visionary known to history simply as El Greco. At first glance, it looks like a dual vision. Below, a dignified funeral attended by the elite of 16th century Spain. Above, a churning ethereal paradise opening its gates to welcome a human soul. But behind this masterpiece lies a centuries-old miracle. There was also a fierce legal battle, a bold political statement, and a sneaky self-portrait. Let's unravel the story behind the canvas.
Welcome to Story Behind the Painting, where we dive into the most famous art roots and learn a lot from that.
To understand what El Greco created, we first have to look at how the canvas is divided into two distinct worlds, the terrestrial realm on the bottom and the celestial realm on top. At the lower center of the canvas lies the corpse of Don Gonzalo Ruiz de Toledo, the Lord of Orgaz, who died in 1312. According to local legend, during his funeral, heaven opened up, and two saints descended from above to lower his body into the grave with their own hands. Notice how brilliantly El Greco contrasts textures, the cold gleaming reflection of the steel armor worn by the Count against the rich gold and embroidered vestments of the two saints. Surrounding the miracle is a wall of 16th century Spanish noblemen wearing black velvet, crisp white lace ruffs, and serious expressions. These aren't historical 14th century figures. They are El Greco's friends, local intellectuals, and contemporaries. On the bottom left, a young boy points directly at the scene. This is Jorge Manuel, El Greco's 8-year-old son. Peeking out of his pocket is a handkerchief with El Greco's signature and Jorge's birth year, 1578. Meanwhile, right above St. Stephen's head, one gentleman looks directly at us. That is El Greco himself, inviting us into the miracle. Look up, and the realism vanishes into sheer dynamic energy as the canvas transitions to the celestial realm. Clouds swirl like ice fragments around an angel squeezing through a tight passage, carrying a glowing, translucent newborn infant representing the soul. At the top sits Christ in blinding white robes, surrounded by the Virgin Mary, John the Baptist, and Old Testament patriarchs like Moses, King David, and St. Peter. Why was this enormous painting created over 250 years after the Count's death? The story begins with the parish priest shown on the right side of the painting, Andrés Núñez. In 1312, the pious Count of Orgaz had left a generous legacy in his will, an annual donation to the Church of Santo Tome of 2 lambs, 16 chickens, 2 skins of wine, 2 loads of firewood, and 800 coins. However, by the mid-1500s, the citizens of Orgaz stopped paying the tribute. Andrés Núñez fought a lengthy legal campaign for decades to force the town to honor the Count's bequest. In 1569, he won. With the back payments collected, Father Núñez commissioned a grand chapel and hired El Greco in 1586 to paint a massive monument celebrating both the Count's charity and the divine miracle. This was also the peak of the Counter-Reformation. The Catholic Church was fighting against Protestantism, and Catholic doctrine stressed that good deeds, charity, and saintly intercession were essential for salvation. The Burial of Count Orgaz was visual propaganda at its finest, proving that because the Count gave to the Church, saints physically came down to bury him, and his soul flew straight to heaven. The visionary behind this monumental canvas was Domenikos Theotokopoulos, known to history simply as El Greco, the Greek. To understand how the Burial of Count Orgaz came to be, we have to trace a remarkable physical and artistic odyssey across 16th century Europe. El Greco was born in 1541 in Candia, the capital of Crete, which was then a territory of the Republic of Venice. He didn't start as a Renaissance master. He trained as a master of the Cretan school, painting Orthodox Byzantine icons. By age 22, he was officially certified as a master painter. From this Eastern tradition, he inherited 2 core principles that would define his entire career: a view of art as a doorway to the divine, and a refusal to bound spiritual reality by strict rules of perspective or earthly anatomy. Hungry to master the Western style, El Greco sailed to Venice around 1567. There, he entered the orbit of Titian, the undisputed giant of Venetian color. He also studied Tintoretto, absorbing dramatic flickering lighting and sweeping stage-like compositions. By 1570, he moved to Rome and lived in the palace of Cardinal Alessandro Farnese. In Rome, he was exposed to the towering influence of Michelangelo. When Pope Pius V considered covering the nudes in Michelangelo's Last Judgment, El Greco brazenly offered to repaint it with equal beauty and more modesty. This arrogance alienated Roman art circles but revealed his fierce conviction not to be a mere imitator. He was forging something entirely his own. In 1577, he arrived in Spain, aiming to become court painter for King Philip II at El Escorial. He painted the martyrdom of Saint Maurice for the king, but Philip II hated it. Philip wanted clear conventional religious propaganda, while El Greco delivered an otherworldly, emotionally intense masterpiece. Rejected by the court, El Greco retreated to Toledo, the ancient religious capital of Spain. Toledo proved to be his true destiny, surrounded by mystical theologians, humanists, and wealthy clergymen like Father Andres Núñez. Here he created his masterpiece, The Burial of Count Orgaz, nearly a decade after arriving in Spain. What makes El Greco's contribution to art history so groundbreaking? He proved that an artist could combine rigorous earthly portraiture with abstract supernatural imagination in a single frame. El Greco rejected classical Renaissance proportions. He stretched human forms and painted flickers of supernatural light. He used cool, shimmering silver, violet, and electric yellow tones to depict spiritual reality. His contemporaries criticized his figures as bizarre or distorted. Modern masters, centuries later, recognized his genius. Paul Cézanne, Jackson Pollock, and Pablo Picasso studied El Greco and saw him as a forefather of expressionism and modern abstraction. The Burial of Count Orgaz remains El Greco's undisputed triumph. It is a work where history, faith, law, and artistic rebellion collide. Standing before it in Santo Tome, you don't just see a funeral. You witness the thin veil between our fragile human existence and the timeless expanse of eternity. Want to explore El Greco's masterpieces in ultra-high resolution and unlock hidden details in thousands of paintings across the world's greatest museums? Download the Muzea app today on iOS and Android. With Muzea, you get interactive audio guides, deep art analysis, and curated virtual tours right in the palm of your hand. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below telling us which painting we should analyze in episode 30. Until next time, keep looking closer.
Welcome to Story Behind the Painting, where we dive into the most famous art works and learn a lot from that.